Hello. Good afternoon, everybody. Can you hear me? Hello. Hello.
Yes, sir. We can hear you.
Thank you. So I am addressing a interdisciplinary group. I hope you are consist of civil engineers, mechanical, electrical, electronics, IT. Is that correct?
Yes.
You have representing all disciplines.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. So we'll start now. We have 24 participants. Today we are going to go into detail on global environmental issues. I think most of you need to know the environmental issues because it is not limited to civil environment engineers. So this diagram shows that our generation has to pass onto the next generation a clean, healthy planet. So our planet, our health. What are the alarming issues which affects health of the planet? Depletion of ozone layer, greenhouse gas emission, carbon dioxide level, deforestation, depletion of resources, water and air, water and air pollution, exploitation, desertification, food waste, acid rain, biodiversity loss, ozone layer depletion. Then global temperature rose about 1.8 Fahrenheit or 1 degree centigrade from 1901 to 2020. That is called during the Industrial Revolution. So now we are in 2026, it has risen to more than 1 degree. Then sea level rise, that is due to melting of the ice, accelerated from 1.7 millimeter per year throughout the most of the 20th century to 3.2 millimeter a year since 1993. You understand that phenomenon. Because ice cap is melting, the interface between the ice, Antarctica, and the sea, when a slight temperature rise means that part of the ice is going to melt. When the volume of ice added to water, the sea level rise. Glaciers are shrinking. Those are the issues of temperature rise. The average thickness of 30 well-studied glaciers has decreased more than 60 feet since 1980. Continuing the alarming issues, the area covered by sea ice in the Arctic at the end of summer has shrunk by 40% since 1979. The amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere has risen by 25% since 1958 and about 40% since industrial revolution. Current 424 particles per million. Now that is an important figure that you need to remember. Particles per million of carbon dioxide, if it goes beyond 450, it will be a disaster for respiratory people with respiratory diseases as well as normal people. So we are very getting closer and closer. And number 8 is snow is melting. Earlier compared to long-term averages, snow is melting earlier compared to long-term averages. Extinction of species. It has been identified that over 40,000 species have extinct. Greenhouse gas emission or atmospheric gases such as carbon dioxide, methane, and water vapor that trap heat radiation from Earth. What happens is when these greenhouse gases content goes above certain levels in the atmosphere, the heat that is trapped in the atmosphere is not radiating to the space. The enhanced effect is excessive greenhouse gas trap too much heat, enhancing the natural greenhouse effect and causing global warming. So, what are the critical actions by human affecting the planet? All those factors that I have listed down are all based on these actions of the human. Burning of fossil fuels, primarily due to the fuels like coal, oil, and gas. What happened to the environment? Industrial and domestic pollution, plastic pollution, fossil fuel burning, built an increase of built environment. Built environment means that we convert land to built environment. Or if you construct a highway, we I think we acquire the forest land and construct a highway. Deforestation, exploitation of the resources, temperature rise, loss of biodiversity, impact on marine environment, communicable diseases, desertification, sea level rise. All these are factors affecting the planet due to human activities. And we need to remember this water is the first casualty of climate change. Now, climate change threatens per capita availability of water, depletion of biodiversity, and ecosystem services. I have mentioned excessive logging, plastic production has reached 400 million tons. Then we call all these factors will increase HMDs, hydrometeorological disasters, which are floods, storms, droughts, and landslides caused by displacement, property damage, poverty, loss of livelihood, destruction, and loss of lives. So we are now annually we are affected due to hydrometeorological disasters. So we are more vulnerable because we are along the equator, close to the equator. 25, 26 are the worst years for the global environment. That is because we are now experiencing number of wars, CO2 emission, global warming, marine pollution, and atmosphere and climate change. Middle East ongoing war, Russia-Ukraine war, then Trump's nonchalant attitude towards climate change. Climate change, Trump doesn't believe there is climate change. So what he says is climate change is the biggest con job of the human history. That is the very words he used in explaining climate change. Biggest con job. So that means we are doing a con job. Israel and USA are warring and emitting poisonous gases and mass destruction. Superpowers ignore rule-based global order. Now, if there is a rule-based global order, everybody will try to agree on international framework where they agree on measures required to reduce global warming. The institutions such as UN and IMF, advocated by Western nations to promote peace and prosperity through multilateral cooperation rather than raw power politics. So the rule-based global order means that how it promotes sovereign equality, human rights, and open markets through it increasingly strained by superpower rivalry and criticism of Western centric. We are now experience a Western centric and ignore rule-based order. Climate and weather. How do you explain climate and weather? Global climate is a description of climate of the planet and as a whole with all the regional differences averaged. When somebody asks what is climate and what is weather, from you, how do you answer? In the second point, I have mentioned it. Climate for layman, if you want to explain, climate is what you expect. Weather is what you get. Weather is a short-term change in the atmospheric condition. Climate is what is expected from the particular place we visit. For example, we go to Kandy or Norelia, expecting clean blue skies. That is the climate that we expect. But when we go there, it starts raining. So that means that is, weather is what you get. Climate is a change in weather patterns over a period in a specific area. Now, for example, rainy days in Norelia in the normal climate is counted, and when there is climate change due to global warming, the rainy days will increase. And also, in some parts, droughts will increase. While climate varies with latitude, longitude, it is also varies with elevation. At higher elevation, temperatures are cooler and precipitation is usually greater. Have you come across this figure? The temperature change relative to elevation is known as the lapse rate, which in this case is defined as every 100 meter we go up, temperature goes down by 1 centigrade. How many of you are aware of this? Can you say something?
Yes, sir.
Hello? You are aware?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. For example, Norelia is 1,865 meters. Colombo is mean sea level. So the difference between Norelia and Colombo is 18 degrees minus. So if we are having 30 degrees here, in Norelia it should be 12 degrees average. Climate research is done using weather data. Weather change, unusual weather changes used for verifying climate change. What are the international initiatives to combat climate change? So those are the global community engaged in productive objectives to combat climate change. UN has established United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, UNFCCC. Triple C. This is a very good, very important initiative, and they have asked all member countries to produce their national programs. And also they conduct annual countries of partners, COP. That's a conference attended by world community. Then there is the International Carbon Action Partnership and carbon trading. How many of you are familiar with carbon trading? Just say yes or no. Hello. Carbon trading is something that they introduced for countries which are having forest, maintain forest, can earn money through carbon trading. For example, we have 1 million hectares of forest, which is equivalent to another industrial country emitting certain amount of carbon to the atmosphere. So that kind of trading is established, but I don't like that kind of trading because we need to have a universal acceptance on emission, to reduce emission. You understand now carbon trading? Now you produce a carbon sink. Carbon sink means if you grow a forest can sink carbon. That means absorb carbon in the atmosphere. Whereas another country can produce industrial emission for economic gain that equivalent of that amount of carbon. Oh, that is not going to work because it's going to be a negative finally, a negative effect. Paris Agreement. Commitments from all countries to reduce their emissions and work together to adapt to the impact of climate change, and calls on countries to strengthen their commitments over time. I think you can read through this rest of the slide. So one of the key commitment by the global communities agreeing on sustainable development goals. The goals SDG has 17 goals. Goal 13 is particularly focused on climate change. So goal 13 says, take urgent action to combat climate change. So countries, as individual countries, they have to report on the progress of nationally determined contributions on climate action plan to cut emission and adapt climate impacts. Each party to the Paris Agreement must establish an NDC and update it every 5 years. So Sri Lanka has done it. Sri Lanka is doing continuously. I think I'm not going to touch on NDC, National Determined Contributions. One of the key things Sri Lanka has agreed is increase forest cover to 32%. Now it is about 22%. We have reduced forest cover over the past 50 years. COP convention started 30 years ago with the Rio Agreement. I think you can read it through. The controls of parties was established by the convention as its main decision-making body of the UNFCCC. So UNFCCC is funding this conference, and about over 100 countries attend this conference. Last year it was held in Brazil. What were the key takeaways? Now, these are the key takeaways of this conference agreed by all nations. Unfortunately, USA did not attend this conference because of Trump's policies. There was a commitment of $1 billion from Brazil to reward countries for maintaining standing forest. Standing forest means the forests which are having now without exploitation, without encroaching the forest, by maintaining the current extent of the forest. There is $1 billion to be rewarded. Overall, over $1 billion pledges were aimed at halting deforestation. Then fossil fuel controversy. Some of the countries have agreed to phase out fossil fuel consumption, combustion, or burning of fossil fuel, leading to concerns about the influence of oil-rich nations and industry lobbyists. Those who are exploiting oil, digging oil, they don't like to contribute to this. So there is a controversy. Then adaptation finance, a political signal to triple adaptation finance by 2035 was achieved, although the deal was criticized. Adaptation means adapt to the climate changes. Just transition mechanism. A new platform was established to support workers and communities during the economic shift away from fossil fuels. Now, fossil fuels usage is shifted. There will be a lot of social issues, livelihood issues. So that is to compensate that, the platform was established. Indecision and ambition gap. The gap in implementation of NDCs. Now you can read through this. The nationally determined contributions are pledged, but when it comes to implementation, there are deficiencies in implementation. There are logistic challenges. The conference was marked by logistic hurdles, including a fire that forced evacuations which delayed negotiations. Because conference was attended by over 50,000 people. So there was an emergency due to a fire. That was actually logistic regarding conference, related to conference. Continuing that, there's a new platform was established about workers. I think I already done it. Yeah, that was repeat. Sorry. instruments for combating climate change. So NDCs, each party has agreed to update it every 5 years. National Action Plan for Climate Change. Most of the countries have this. Sri Lanka update periodically. What are the key terms that we encountered when you learn climate change? One is adaptation, which means anticipating the adverse effects of climate change. You expect the adverse effects. For example, cyclones. You can't, as a small country, we cannot prevent cyclones, but before the cyclones hit, we can adapt to minimize losses, damage, and human losses. For example, reservoirs. We have a series of reservoirs. We can use reservoirs to mitigate floods. So that is adaptation, and ask people to evacuate vulnerable areas for landslides and floods. That is adaptation. Mitigation means making impact of climate change less severe by preventing or reducing emission of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, and also expanding forest cover. Mitigation. Restoration of the environment, biodiversity, and natural resource base. Those are the key mitigation. We restore the environment. For example, we refrain from expanding built environment. If you expand built environment, there will be heat islands. So you can see now, Battaramull area is a heat island because a lot of building has come up. Built environment has expanded. Restoration of the environment, biodiversity, and natural resource base are the key mitigation efforts. And you can go through this. So our target is to reduce greenhouse gas emission by 14.5% by shifting to clean energy. We can do that. Then carbon neutrality is another task, another commitment. That means we fix carbon the same amount that we emit. Enhancing renewable energy, increasing forest cover to 32%, and strengthening climate resilience through adaptation. That we minimize the damage due to cyclones, landslides, and droughts. Key national commitments. I think you can go through this. I need not. Hope you got the points. So national policy on climate change via Sri Lanka's commitments, national adaptation plan, climate finance strategy. Now it is coordinated by Climate Change Secretariat, Ministry of Environment. But our issue is national budgets. How much more funds allocated for these actions? There is a green fund, green climate fund, international fund. If you prepare a project proposal that convince this, achievement of objectives of climate change and mitigation or adaptation, then you can mobilize those funds. It is very hard to convince that. It's a difficult thing to do, but one of the key challenges Sri Lanka has is to train professionals who can develop convincing proposals and tap the Green Climate Fund. All these things are now we face in the 21st century are due to human civilization is unsustainable. That is how I explain. No, nobody has stated this statement. The invention of the motor car is considered a big leap in human civilization. We all know that we cannot, compromise having a motor vehicle. Humans have wiped out 60% of the animals from the earth. Yeah, from 1970s. Sorry, this is not it is human. I think somebody's carbon footprint is 3.55 tons. Use the calculator in this link. Now there's a thing called my carbon footprint. Now when I did it, it is 3.55. You can do this exercise, then you will learn about how to find carbon footprint. Are you familiar with that term? Can you respond? Carbon footprint. Hello? Anybody?
Yes, sir. We are familiar with that. I heard once about it.
You can, when I share this picture, you can calculate on your own carbon footprint. By those who are not familiar, you can read some literature before the exam. Now, industrialization is part of the human civilization. Is a garbage, actually human civilization is a garbage manufacturing factory. That is how I explain. Reducing carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, hydrochlorofluorocarbons, HCFCs, hydrofluorocarbons, and ozone in the lower atmosphere. Ozone depletion gases. Those are the HCFCs and HFCs. That is humans. Sorry, we are producing too much garbage as industrial development. Unsustainable energy sources. Those are fuel, coal, then wars fought in the name of religion, territory, or any other fanatism. Impact of anthropogenic activities in the past 200 years changed the world. Anthropogenic means related to human activities. For the past 200 years, changed the world. Now, this is just a diagram conceptual diagram showing how Earth's global climate works. Solar radiation pumps seawater and precipitation takes place. Then solar radiation also warm the oceans. What happens is the intensity of rain has increased. I hope you have observed during the past 10 years, the intensity has increased because 1 degree of temperature rise means a lot of water is pumped at a higher rate from the sea. Then it becomes mostly we are affected due to southern hemisphere where there is a lot of sea area. So during the winter, that's why we are getting during the winter southern hemisphere get warmed up. Winter on the northern hemisphere, but in the southern hemisphere it is summer. So that's why there we experience cyclones in November. You got the point?
Yes, sir.
We are near the equator. So southern hemisphere, summer is in November, December. These are the percentage of carbon emissions. So carbon dioxide is the biggest contributor. Methane, how do you explain methane? Methane is actually now paddy fields emit methanes, wetlands emit methanes, cattle breeding emit methane, then food waste emit methane, garbage also emit methane. So this is a brief slide on Sustainable Development Goals. SDGs were born at United Nations Conference on Sustainable Development in Rio de Janeiro in 2012. Adopted by United Nations in 2015 as a universal call to action to end poverty, protect the planet, and ensure that by 2030 all people enjoy peace and prosperity. I hope you can go through the numbers, please. How many of you are familiar with these goals? Can say somebody. Hello?
No,
Anybody? Yeah,
I'm not familiar.
others? Anybody there? I think every engineer has to learn how, because engineer has to contribute to many goals. So out of 17 goals, there are 169 targets. The targets are measured by 244 indicators. So this is how it is briefly produced in a single slide. Now see, goals 1 to 6 are right-based. That is fundamental and human rights. End poverty, end hunger, health, well-being, education, achieve gender equality, water and sanitation. So 7 to 12, I think you can go through based on development and growth. What we are supposed to do is these 7 to 12 goals must follow the targets in order to develop and grow according to the sustainable development. To follow sustainable development, we need to go through this affordable energy, economic growth, resilient infrastructure, sustainable industrialization, reduce inequalities, cities, livable cities, safe for the people. Safe means protected from droughts, floods, landslides, sustainable consumption and production without waste, without exploitation. So this bracket, within the bracket, each goal has targets. Number of targets are given in the brackets. Health of the planet, 13 to 17 goals. Combat climate change, ocean, health of the ocean, conserve life underwater, biodiversity, forest, biodiversity and protect forest, promote deforestation, peace, justice, inclusive approach, strong institutions. We need to build strong institutions to incorporate these goals and implement and achieve targets. Quality of life is defined by this slide. I hope you can see that. Quality of life will deteriorate if you don't have good air, don't have good, clean water, don't have quality of food, if you don't have a good environment, quality of environment, then your life, quality of life is deteriorated, degrade. You can also improve quality of life by polluting the environment. You have an air conditioner at home and boil water and drink. Then you grow your quality of food, of course, is depend on the fast food, the unhealthy food and fast food. Processed food for 20th century habits started in 20th century. Quality of environment, air, land and water pollution. In total, it's called environmental pollution. So these are the 4 important factors affecting quality of life. Ozone layer depletion, I think we have global community has somehow made certain decisions and gradually is restored part of the ozone layer. Otherwise, if the ozone layer is depleted, we get direct sunlight, UV light, radiation. Now, say without ozone, the sun's intense UV radiation would sterilize the Earth's surface. Sterilize means it becomes barren. No, nobody will be able to grow anything on the surface of the Earth. So that was an alarming issue. So ozone layer protects life on Earth from the sun's most harmful rays. Discovery of the ozone layer hole in 1980s promoted successful international cooperation to phase out the use of harmful CFCs. Now we all use other gases in ACs and refrigeration. Scientists expect that it will be fully repaired by 2050. I think we'll take a break, 5 minutes break now, and come back at 6:15. Is that okay? Hello?
Okay, sir.
Okay. Hello. Welcome back. We'll start again. Hope you are there.
Yes, sir.
Now, this is some facts about how we contribute. Not contribute, actually. CO2 emissions and limits. These are some of the factors that contributing to global warming. A typical petrol car emits 500 grams of CO2 for every kilometer run. So, now if you run, now you can calculate if you go to goal, how many kilograms of CO2 is emitted. This is the average person. Now we are only 1 ton greenhouse gas, but other countries more. Average person in Sri Lanka produces 1 ton. To stop climate change, this is the maximum amount of. In order to we produce 1 ton, but in actual fact, you need to limit your carbon footprint to 600 grams CO2 emissions. Per year, per person. Now, climate and gender, when you think of climate and gender, men contribute to climate change more than women. At the same time, women are more affected due to climate impacts. Burning a single liter of petrol produces 200 grams of CO2. Diesel emits 2,600 grams, 2.6 kilograms. Hybrids can still have tailpipe emissions. Only fully electric cars will avoid emitting carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, and hydrofluorocarbons. Each second, 200 tons of CO2 is removed from the environment. That is by the forest and other natural phenomena. But we produce more than 200 tons, human activities. You understand the last bullet, each second. Not then, no, it is a mistake here. The environment. Global warming, how human contribute. Burning fossil fuel, 49%. Agriculture, 13%. Deforestation, 14%. Industrial process, 24%. So these two both are combined usually because burning fossil fuel also industrial process within the industrial process. Now there is a carbon cycle. Decay, now say sunlight, photosynthesis, emit oxygen, absorb carbon dioxide. That is shown in this red arrow, photosynthesis. Then others contribute, now say decay of organisms, dead organisms, and waste products contribute to carbon dioxide. Factory emissions. Then trees emit carbon dioxide in the night. Animal respiration. So you can see a lot of arrows going to carbon dioxide. Only one arrow is coming out of carbon dioxide. That is trees. So by growing trees, we can maintain the health of the planet. Fossil and fossil fuel again in the factories. Now, I hope you can get an idea of how carbon dioxide, how many sources are there contributing carbon dioxide, and there's only one source of sinking carbon dioxide. Sink. There's only one sink. Carbon sink is the forest. Now, this again, I want to emphasize on this vehicle emission. The motor car is considered a massive leap in human civilization, making a pivotal shift in technology, economics, and daily life since the late 19th century. So we cannot think of a life without a motor car. However, its contribution to the global environment is detrimental. Burning 1 liter of petrol, as I said before, you can see. This is how the CO2 has risen from 1980 to now, to date. 340 ppm. ppm means particles per million in the atmosphere. Now see, the air that we breathe is heavy, heavier than before. So even myself is a person who is suffering from asthma. If I go to a city with a lot of pollution, now I went to Seoul, South Korea in 1997. I got asthma because pollution was so high. Now they have started cleaning the vehicle emission. Now they say they have reduced pollution. For example, Bangkok. Then New Delhi. New Delhi, it's really a disaster. Now, if it goes beyond 450, that'll be a disaster. Three steps to reduce carbon emission. Now, as I said before, the carbon trading is carbon offsets. You get credits for offsetting. Step one, company meets or gets close to meeting its emission cap. Now, a company, the climate secretariat can do a audit and say, identify a company and say their company meets emission cap. We can set a emission cap for each company of industry. Then the steps they have taken to meet that limit. Step two, company invest in a project designed to reduce carbon emissions, which provides carbon offsets. Now the engineers have to work towards this. If an industry consult you, you have to inspect and see what are the areas that you can reduce carbon emission. Offset step three, offset program includes renewable energy investment, reforestation program, capturing gases, etc. So these are the actions. So step three is that company receives carbon offset credits. If company is able to go below their cap, then they will get a credit. Credits means financial support. You can see that. We need 8 billion trees to offset carbons, 8 billion trees. Now this is, of course, I can skip because you can always we shall go through this with the lecture. Carbon dioxide emission by country. Unfortunately, China's economic development is a massive carbon footprint. I don't want to discriminate China, but it is China still have to transform their industry into a clean, green industry. So this is actually published by this 8 billion trees campaign. Now the critical environmental problems, greenhouse gas emission, we have always mentioned before, heat waves in Antarctica and ice sheet melting, which is very critical. Then poor governance, lack of political will to reduce greenhouse gas emission. Now, this applies to USA now because Trump wants to drill more and more petrol. He wants to expand drilling. Then food waste. 1/3 of the food is wasted, and it is the harvesting level and retail and consumer levels. It is third highest emission of greenhouse gas emitter after USA and China. USA and China together, you say China, USA, then food waste is the next highest emission of greenhouse gas. Biodiversity loss, exploitation of natural resource beyond the capacity of the earth to replenish. Now, biodiversity loss, exploitation of natural resources beyond the capacity of the earth to replenish same. That is beyond sustainable development. It is not sustainable if we go beyond the capacity of the earth. The reason World Wild Fund for Nature found that the population size of mammals, fish, birds, reptiles, and amphibians have experienced a decline of an average of 68% between 70 and 2016. That is 46 years. It's a huge decline. These are the factors that I think you need to be focused on. Plastic pollution is another challenge. You know that in the 60s, we never used plastics or polythene. Our shopping bag was a gunny bag, I think. 2 million tons of plastic produced from 4 million tons in 1950s to 2015. If no action is cumulative plastic pollution of ocean will reach to 600 million if no action is taken. As we all know that plastic is not degradable, so that can continue to damage the environment. We cannot wait till 400 years to degrade it. On this plastic, only a few has made a fortune. Few companies in the world have made a fortune while polluting the environment. Then the other critical factor is deforestation. Every hour of Every hour, forests the size of 300 football fields are cut down. This is continuing. By the year 2030, the planet might have only 10% of its forest. If deforestation isn't stopped, they could all be gone in less than 100 years. It's a very sad situation. We know that the biggest forests are in Brazil, Congo, and Indonesia. So if they exploit their forest for economic gain, that is a disaster for the planet. WHO, World Health Organization, says 4.2 to 7 million people die every year due to CO2 emissions. Can you believe? Due to respiratory illnesses. Continuing on the subject, then melting ice caps and sea level rise 3.0 millimeter per year globally. If the entire Greenland ice sheet melts, sea level would rise by 6 meters. 6 meters mean Maldives will be gone. Maldives is only 1 meter from the mean sea level. You understand this point 8. Ocean acidification. Ocean acidification takes place because when the CO2 increases in the atmosphere, there is always interaction with the interface between ocean and atmosphere, dissolve CO2 in the ocean. Then ocean pH will rise. That will cause bleaching of coral reef. Yeah, coral reef at risk complete wipe out by 2050. Coral reef might number 10, agriculture. Land, water, and environment is exploited for agriculture. Use of fertilizer and methane emission are related to agriculture. These are called unsustainable agriculture with high carbon and water footprint. So we need to shift to sustainable agriculture by low emission of CH3, low use of water. Water and food insecurity is another alarming issue. Per capita water availability is reducing annually. Now you can see loss of topsoils due to high erosion, high intensity of rain cause high erosion. Therefore, that affects food security. In your day-to-day, just a question. You can put down some points in your answers. In your day-to-day life, what would you do to protect the planet? I hope you understood these points. This is an important thing that most of the politicians may not understand. Environmental rights and governance. Sustainability is maintaining development and consumption within the Earth's replenishment capacity. That means exploitation is the most dangerous thing that can go beyond the replenishment capacity of the earth. In our globalized world, environmental threats require effective responses that promote peace, justice, development, and fulfillment of environmental and human rights. Now, say you exploit environment by polluting water, air, and the land. What will happen to the people? One man's action can jeopardize or can uh, destroy lives of the people by his action to exploit the environment, water and land. UNEP promotes sound environmental governance. United Nations Environment Program promotes sound environmental governance. The rules, policies, and institutions that shape how humans interact with environment is included in this environmental governance system. By building robust government systems, we can safeguard the environment and human rights and work towards all 17 UN Sustainable Development Goals. The last bullet is the importance. Adhere. Now, in your practice, when you practice as an engineer, adhere to environmental and social safeguards in all development activities to minimize damage to the society. That is the part of job of the engineer. We all know that we, in the early 60s or 70s, we didn't care about social and environment safeguards. Those are introduced by mainly the aid groups like World Bank, ADB, JICA. They introduced because they saw that there are investments that took place in the early days causing mega projects and lot of affected parties. That's why it is important to consider beneficiaries and affected parties equally when you embarked on development programs. This is the map showing water stress. Water stress is that availability of water annually below 1600 meter cubes per head per annum. If water stress increases, if the availability per capita availability of water goes below 1600 meter cubes per year, water stress increases. Fortunately, we have 2300, but still we are in the high stress region because of variation in water availability. Now see what happens. These colors show water stress, water scarcity, and absolute scarcity. Now you can see Sri Lanka water stress, but we are fortunate that we are having more than 1600 meter cubes per capita per year. Saudi Arabia, Libya, Egypt, absolute scarcity, they suffer. Even US, California, there is no water available for all the people in adequate quantities. climate research. That is to find out, collect data, long-term regional range of temperature, humidity and rainfall patterns over seasons, years, or decades. Now say there is a warning. No area is susceptible to climate change. It is expected that by 2050, number of days with 23 degrees or above will rise to 250 per year. That is out of 365 days. The days which are more than 23 degrees will rise over to 250 per year. Now it is say 200 per year, but by 2050 it will be 250 per year. That is a climate research outcome. Yeah, these other things I think it mentions about emission pathways. That is to those are the climate indicators, but I don't want to mention here. Use weather data to carry out climate research, rainfall, humidity, temperature, wind speed, number of sunny days and rainy days. Those are the basics. These are number of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 climate classifications. I think you can go through the slides. So expansion of tropical or megathermal climate region is a danger, and reducing polar or alpine climates regions. Those are the challenges. I think I mentioned this earlier. Adaptation and mitigation. That you need to know the difference between these two terms. As I said, adaptation is that minimize the damage due to climate change. Mitigation is minimize climate change impacts by expansion of resource base, natural resource base. Now, these are the challenges that we face. What to expect? I think you can go through. This is climate zones in Sri Lanka. There are 3 key climate zones: wet, intermediate, and dry. Sri Lanka has lost forest cover from 48% to 28% in the past 50 years. So this is alarming, and I think we in Colombo are most affected, and also people in the north and east. Sri Lanka has almost all climate zones. That is the unique topography of Sri Lanka. Can you see that? It's called Köppen climate classification. So we have monsoon, equatorial, temperate zones, tropical savanna. No, we don't have that. I think yes. A tropical savanna is somewhere here. All of course we don't have. Hydrometeorological disasters. How we experience. Floods annually, droughts annually, landslide common with intense rainfall, cyclones. Now 2025, I couldn't add it. There was a severe weather conditions in 2003. Tsunamis only once, earthquake no, only tremors of very small magnitude. Volcanoes, prehistoric volcanoes. That is why our central hills are all formed due to volcanoes. That is also one theory. But there are other theories like shifting of plates could have lifted the mountains, rocky volcanic mountains. Tornadoes, no. Glaciers, no. Storms. Salinity intrusion is very common in Sri Lanka. I hope water and irrigation engineers, they are challenged due to salinity intrusion. Challenges to engineers. I hope you can go through this. Building a climate resilient infrastructure, understand local problems. Energy efficient, water use efficient, water efficient, carbon footprint. Those are the factors. Limit greenhouse gas emission. So when you start a development project, whatever the project, you have to consider these factors. Energy efficient, water efficient, then what is the carbon footprint? Limit greenhouse gas emission. Climate risk assessment, risk and opportunity analysis. Mitigate side effects, local specific hazards. Identification in feasibility and build resilience. EIA, I apply those things, tools. So climate resilience, resilient infrastructure. We saw the bridge, about 150 years old bridge across Mahaveli damage. That was, you can say it is climate resilient, but when it comes to this level, its resilience failed. Sustainable development and self-reliance. Minimize resources conversion, damage to the environment and sustainability. Minimize resource conversion. Don't convert land, forest into other development activities. Use of renewable energy to reduce global warming. 5 pillars of climate resilience are threshold capacity, coping capacity, recovery capacity, adaptive capacity, and transformative capacity. Now, these things have to be learned by engineers in order to develop, achieve sustainable development goals. Transformative capacity means we transform the development into a healthy, environmental friendly, climate adaptive development. Now you can log into Center for Engineering and Resilience for Climate Adaptation, CERCA, and learn further if you are interested in learning I have actually tried to, in 2 hours, it is difficult to discuss, but I have tried to cover everything that is mostly helpful for you to expand your knowledge on climate change, because everybody, regardless of your discipline, it's better to expand the knowledge on climate change. Okay, thank you very much for listening. Any questions? I would like to invite any questions. Hope you are there.
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah,
Regarding these trees, especially only the trees we having like a sink for the carbon dioxide.
yeah.
What about the trees? Which type of trees, usually make more carbon oxygen output from the carbon? Something like that available, or all the trees are equal, producing the
No,
oxygen?
I think that I haven't gone through there. But one thing I know, that if you grow pinus trees, that will pump water to the atmosphere, groundwater, too much. So that's why we discourage, pinus, when you go to hill country, you can see the tall trees which are pumping water out to the atmosphere. That is not good. So other trees which are spreading across the land are more favorable for carbon sink. Now, when too much carbon dioxide is there, it is heavier. So tall trees cannot absorb more carbon dioxide, but short trees can absorb. You got the point?
Yes, thank you, sir. Thank you. And one more question.
Yeah.
Is there any machines available that can, breathe in the carbon dioxide and it will breathe out the oxygen, something like conversion, CO2 to oxygen? Any machines available or under studies?
There may be machines, but I haven't come across this. You put CO2 and get oxygen.
Yes, yes, that is what I'm asking.
Yeah, possible, but
Especially this can be installed in the factories where the
no,
carbon
there are,
dioxide.
reducing CO2 through certain muffle, say, exhaust pipe. You can install certain, there are equipment to reduce CO2, not to convert to oxygen, but to reduce CO2. That is a question that I will let you know when I come across.
Okay, so thank you.
Anybody else asking questions? Can give 5 minutes.
So one more question: is there any activities or some sort of rules available to reduce the carbon pollution, especially in Colombo area? Something like, for example, converting all the three-wheelers to electric three-wheeler,
No.
some sort of things.
Those are actually the nationally determined contributions. There is, you can always download, but they don't talk about. But phasing out of fuel, internal combustion engines is there. That's why they promote battery cars. Actually, battery cars, there was a policy to reduce taxes on battery cars, so that there will be, it's a promotion of battery cars. So three-wheelers, of course, it's a big social issue. Somebody has to do ultimately. It is not in the agenda. In fact, there is a promotion of reducing two-stroke engines. I think new three-wheelers are, if they want to import, that will be not two-stroke. Yes.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
If there are no questions, shall we wind up then? Anybody else? I want you to, especially now, previous occasions, I find very difficult to read the language sometimes. When you ask those other batches, they are very poor in English, but we need to be careful on writing essay type answers. Please be careful to be clear and to the point. I want you better than previous occasions. Okay, thank you very much for listening.
One
I hope
question.
that this lecture has given you something new, new knowledge. Is it so? Some
Yes,
takeaway messages?
of course. Yes, of course.
Hmm. Okay, then all the best for your professional review. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank
Thank
you, sir.
you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks.